for me, and I welcome their hatred.
What is up, everybody? This is Hater Radio. My name is Chris McLean. I'm here with my co-host, Ian Gibson. Ian, how are you?
I'm doing good. I'm good to be back home and very grateful for it.
Yeah, I mean, if people don't know, Ian lives in the Tampa Bay area, and obviously, people are aware of the hurricane that happened. And I'm so glad you guys are all right. It was stressful living out here in LA, thinking about everybody, and I'm glad for the most part things seemed to be somewhat lucky, but it was very fortunate that everything went the way it did, because there was like a cold front that kind of diminished how bad it could have been. Yeah, because it was scary, man. Like
Yeah.
I mean, I know you were there, like, you were aware of it all, but like, my family dealt with it. My parents had like, I think it was like 12 trees fall on their property. So they're dealing with it now, and they're cutting them up and like, chainsawing them and putting them away. So it definitely, for the most part, most people I know didn't have anything severe. There were like little things here and there, but it just could have been a lot worse. And I'm grateful that it was, as insignificant as it was, because it definitely could have been detrimental, and I'm grateful for that. But let's jump into it. This is a college football media brand. We are Hater Radio, and we talk about college football. So let's do that. Week 7 here was a big week. There was a lot going on. There was a ton of big games, a ton of crazy endings, a ton of close finishes. This topsy-turvy season that we're seeing with a 12-team playoff at the end of it is definitely not making it less interesting. That's for sure. I think a lot of the worry with expanding the playoff was, the regular season is going to not be as significant as it has been in years past. But I'll tell you, man, this is probably one of the better Saturdays that I've seen in a long time. And it was from top to bottom, from the beginning game at the 12 o'clock with the Alabama-South Carolina game all the way till the very end. There was games all throughout the day that had, playoff implications, conference, championship potential. Like, it just was a great day all around. But let's jump into it. South Carolina, Alabama is our first game. I didn't get to watch this game live because I was at the SC game. But man, this was a great game. I watched the recap, and Sellers really played very well, considering how good the talent disparity between Alabama and South Carolina is. And he kept them in this game, and he had a chance to win it at the end, which is crazy. This game was just ridiculous, because it seemed like when I was watching the recap, Alabama goes up 14-0, and I'm like, like, if you don't know the score of the game, you're probably thinking like, this is going to be a blowout, because the way it was trending, it looked like Alabama was just going to put on the gas and then, win 48-0 or 48-7 or something like that. But, credit to South Carolina for coming back. Their defense played really well. Kyle Kennard, defensively for South Carolina, had a really strong game. Milroe was like all right, but he had 2 bad interceptions. And Ryan Williams really was kind of, I don't know, just didn't show up in this game that much. Bama is really lucky to have won this game. They only had 313 total yards, which is not a lot considering how much they put up against Vandy and Georgia the 2 weeks before. So I don't know what was going on in this game. I think really South Carolina's defense is what you can point to. But Ian, your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, so this is one of those, if Bama was a person like a friend I knew for a while, over these last 2 weeks, I would literally just sit down with him and be like, "Hey, bro, are you okay? Because this is not normal. At least from what we expect from Alabama, and especially with the talent we know Bama has.
Yeah.
They are falling into a very bad trap of playing down to competition, which we've seen a lot of top 10 teams do. And Bama's falling into that now. They should have really, got off to a great start, 14-0, but really were like stuck in the mud. You pointed it out. South Carolina did a very good job adjusting and forcing Milroe to make the play, but they did a good job on focusing on Ryan Williams and saying, got to find somebody else to beat us. When you take away that primary target, it is much more difficult for Bama's offense to keep on going. The other thing I wanted to mention was really what saved the day. Ironically, Bama's defense was, especially in the secondary play near towards the end, was very soft, was not tight, and you can tell kind of a pullover from even to the second half of the Georgia game that the defense has been very stagnant and just way too loose on coverage. They were still able to force 4 turnovers, really 3, because the one at the end was like a Hail Mary that was a pick.
Yeah.
But the defense was able to force those 3 turnovers, which were critical in stopping South Carolina from getting even more points on the board. But that 2-point conversion, they were, Bama is very fortunate that that 2-point conversion was sailed. And even more so, they were really asking for trouble when South Carolina recovered that onside kick.
Oh, yeah.
But regardless, Bama survives in a big way. They just definitely not the best looking 5-1 team I've seen out of Alabama in a long time.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so DeBoer takes over after Saban leaves, and a bunch of the players left. And, I don't think the expectations coming into the season were almost like if they won 9 or 10 games, most people probably wouldn't have been surprised. And I think that's likely with this team. I mean, yes, they did beat Georgia, and they're now 5-1. So they have a really good chance of getting to the SEC championship game. But, honestly, people aren't surprised if they do lose games, because it's just, one, it's difficult to replace a legend. 2, they lost a bunch of their players. So they still did end up with a decent recruiting and like transfer portal stuff. But I don't know. I'm not of the person that DeBoer has to win this year, which I think he is fully capable of winning in the long run, because obviously he did it at Fresno State and obviously he did it at Washington. So he's fully capable, but I just expect this year to be more of a dose of reality, which I think, I don't know, some Bama fans are not aware that not everyone in college football struggles for the most part outside of the top 4 teams. So I think them finally realizing, hey, we might actually lose some games here is probably too much for them to deal with, because they're just used to 15 years of just 10 11 12 win seasons, and then going to the playoff almost 70% of the time. So I don't know, I still feel like there's a lot of talent on this Bama team, regardless of the discrepancies with the transfers out. But it's not there this year. But, I still think DeBoer will eventually have them going pretty well. Let's move on. UAB Army. I wanted to highlight this game because I wanted to see Army, a good recap. But they don't even have good recaps for AAC. And I hate that, because the AAC is obviously not as heavily viewed as some of the other conferences. So they don't put full recaps of these games, which I was so disappointed in, because I really wanted to watch 12, 15 minutes of Army highlights, but I didn't get to see it. All I saw was 5 minutes. But what I did see was Army destroying UAB in that first half. They were up 34-3, And Bryson Daly, the kid is just a monster in the option. And he had 4 rushing touchdowns and a passing TD. They just dominated this game. UAB was never close. UAB looked terrible. Army had 413 rush yards, just a complete domination. Ian, what are your thoughts on Army?
So Army this is literally the point of when I play a dynasty for too long, when these schools are like Army, Navy, Air Force are like in the top 10 or playing in like New Year's Six bowls.
Yeah.
And I guess we're living in that timeline. Army is what you they are what you expect, and they take advantage of it. They are so proficient in how they play, and it's a tough system to crack. But you're right, Bryson Daly, he's an absolutely threat on both the ground and the passing game. Even when they do have to pass, he has been automatic, and that's the thing. It's the old thing of run to set up the pass. But the times they do need to pass, he's nailed all the big plays. But the rushing attack with Daly and Udo and Noah Short have been fantastic this year. And it's one of those things where once they get downhill, it's hard to stop. But they also play possession football. That's just a trademark thing of them. They'll just play keep away and force you to make the big play. The one thing I did want to mention in this game, besides Army just having their coming out party, was the fact that we need to seriously take a close look at the UAB program right now, because it has gone in complete reverse since it has joined the AAC and since Trent Dilfer was hired. And I want to remind everybody, Trent Dilfer was never had any college coaching experience. It was only high school. So he went and he was very successful at Texas high school. I think he won a Division II state title there, and jump immediately into a head coaching gig for UAB. And this is not, the UAB that everybody made fun of for dying pretty much in the mid 2010s. This was a team that won Conference USA a couple of years and went to consecutive bowl games. And I remember when they came into the American, I was like, that is a good addition. And now it's just completely going backwards. They've won 5 games since Dilfer took over, and then they've been blowouts. Not taking anything away from Arby, but another point of this game is to seriously look at where UAB needs to go after this, because it's not looking like Dilfer is going to be the guy.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think anytime you take a coach that doesn't have any experience at a certain level, it's a big chance, because you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what you're going to get. I know that Gus Malzahn was a really good high school coach, and then he got an opportunity with Arkansas. I think is either an offensive coordinator or some position because of a quarterback that he had coached. And then he parlayed that into working with Auburn as their offensive coordinator when Cam was there. And then obviously the Auburn head coach, and then now at UCF. So sometimes it can kind of work, which it did for a little while with Gus Malzahn. But Trent Dilfer, it's obviously not working at all. So the funny thing is they still got one of their victories against USF in that only 5-win total. So that doesn't look great, but let's move on. But Army, is now ranked, and I think Navy is ranked too. So good for them. And I'm always go Army, because I did a year in Army ROTC, so I'm always an Army fan. So let's move on to Texas, Oklahoma. This game, second quarter, Texas just, takes it to them in the second quarter, up 21-3 at half, and then just kind of coasts the rest of the way. Quinn Ewers didn't look that great, but I don't think he needed to, because this Oklahoma team is underwhelming. Best to describe them. They're just kind of, I don't know. Their quarterback play is subpar. If it's Arnold or the guy that was in Saturday, Hawkins. And they're not impressive to anyone. They have talent, but then they were also 1 through 5 of their starting wide receivers were hurt. So when you don't have wide receivers to throw to, you're not going to really have an opportunity to score points, which they didn't. They only scored 3, and take it with what they had to deal with, Texas's like best defense in the country, which, that honestly, that might be why Texas wins this year, wins the national title this year, is because their defense is probably top 5 defense in the country. And I don't see any team in the country being able to score like 30 plus points on them. I really don't. I have a hard time seeing that. And I feel like Texas, if Quinn Ewers gets healthier, which hopefully he can, then, they're going to look even more dominant on offense too. They have a lot of pieces, Quinn, if he had not been hurt, would be the front runner for the Heisman. And it's a shame that he got hurt for those few games, because now he's really kind of behind the 8 ball with the Heisman race. But I don't think he cares. He just wants to win a national title, which I think if he's healthy, they're the best team in the country. And I think even if Arch Manning has to play, I think Arch is good enough to lead them to success as well. So this Texas team is very good. I like everything about them. I'm impressed with them. Number 1 team in the nation for a reason. And we'll talk about their game on Wednesday coming up. But yeah, they have a schedule coming up that's getting a little more daunting as we go. So this is just the beginning for SEC play for them, because they've only, I think, played 2 SEC games. So they'll get like their full taste of what an SEC schedule is like. Your thoughts, Ian?
Yeah, and with this game, it was merely just Texas was going to out-talent Oklahoma. Oklahoma, when you have all your receivers out, you have a Hawkins who is very clearly deer in the headlights, and it's not his fault. It's his first start. And when your first start is against the number 1 passing defense in the country, that's just throwing you to the wolves. They did the best they could. But honestly, just Texas was way too good for Oklahoma. And that was the thing. Oklahoma actually had chances, especially when they got that interception. The whole point of emphasis, and I remember they were talking about it in pregame and during the game, Oklahoma had to shorten the field. If you're going to make it any easier and have any chance of pulling off this upset, you got to shorten the field for Hawkins, make him run, or, move upfield. And they couldn't get anything going. I think they only had a total of 200 something yards, and Texas almost doubled up on them in terms of total yards. And Ewers looked rusty, but he had enough guys to throw to bail him out. And that's the thing, is that Texas is so deep at wide receiver. It's, you could throw it anywhere and usually somebody will come down to it. It's just making the smart play and making sure only a guy in a burnt orange jersey can get it and nobody else. But all in all, just a big win for Texas. They're, like you said, the schedule gets harder and the real test begins, because their first 2, and I'm going to put 2 in quotations because Mississippi State is an SEC team and I'm still getting used to Oklahoma in the SEC. But those are their first 2 SEC games. And now it gets tougher. Now they got to face Georgia.
Yeah, it was 406 to 237 total yardage in that game. And Quinn Ewers was nearly 75% passing. So he had a really good, solid game, but it wasn't like, huge big plays, throws down the field. It was kind of like take what was in front of him. And, because really, like you said, Oklahoma is just not talented enough to beat this Texas team. And, the fumbles that Oklahoma had really set up Texas too as well. So this Texas team took advantage of the situation, and they didn't have to press hard, and they still won by 31 points, which is pretty amazing. So let's move on. The game I went to, Penn State, USC, I had a blast. I got some coverage. I'm going to put something together in the next couple of days and send it out on social media. But, it was a great game, honestly. My main takeaway is that USC probably should have won this game, but Penn State made enough plays to win it. And obviously, the refs were a huge issue with some of these defensive pass interference that were not called, which should have been called, especially I think there was one either in the fourth quarter or in the overtime that clearly was pass interference by Penn State, and they didn't call. They were like mugging the USC wide receivers all day, and they were getting away with it. And I know Penn State is a physical defense, but it's still like, come on, man. Like, you can't just let them completely, the one guy like tackled him before the ball was even there. And I'm just like, how is this not pass interference? But anyways, USC had their chances. They had an opportunity where they had an interception that was in like near the red zone of where they were starting at. So they had the opportunity to score a touchdown there, and they didn't, and they were held to a field goal. If they score a touchdown there, I think they win the game. And it's a shame because like that's the difference in the game. You know who actually went off for Penn State was their tight end, H-back, fullback, whatever his name is, Tyler Warren. Yeah, the kid had 17 catches for 224 yards. I was counting as I'm watching the highlights again because I didn't see all the game because I got in late to the stadium around the second quarter and then didn't see some of the beginning of the third quarter. So I was like curious how many catches he's had. And I'm watching the recap again yesterday. I'm like, dude, this guy has at least 15 catches. What the heck? And it was like they were going exclusively to him almost the entire time. And the rest of the team had like a few catches here and there. The one guy, Fleming for Penn State, had the 2 huge catches on those fourth downs in the fourth quarter on that last minute drive to tie it up. So just a crazy game. USC had an opportunity to kick a field goal in overtime, miss it, and then Penn State wins it with a easy field goal. So, I don't know. USC's season is not technically over. Again, that's what I think people need to realize. This is a new era. I just saw something where the FPI, ESPN's ranking, like how they do, like how people are with strength of schedule and some other things they take in factors. USC is like ranked like 13th. So obviously people think very highly of them and the metrics show very highly for them because they are a good team. They just have lost 3 close games by a grand total of 3-7-7. So 17 points between the 3 games, which is an average of like 4.5 a game, which, dude, they've been in almost every game that they've lost, and they probably should have beat Minnesota, and they were leading Michigan late, and they were leading Penn State late, and it's just they can't close for whatever reason. I know in the end of the fourth that they had an opportunity for a late field goal, and they were kind of like slow playing it. I thought it was the right move because it wouldn't have left Penn State any time. They just kind of didn't convert on that first down they needed to get to, and that was really the ball game. And it's a shame, this USC team deserved to win. They were the better team, and they just didn't get the win. What are your thoughts, Ian?
Yeah, and with the one thing that stuck out to me is, one, not only did USC, everything was going right for them in the first half. They were up 20-6 going into halftime. Moss was looking good. Joyner, that connection was working out, and the rushing game was very effective. But the one, when you're up by that much, it's 2-possession game, and you have the number 14 in your house. You got to keep the pedal to the metal. And the play calling went to very conservative screen behind the line passes. And it just allowed Penn State to get enough of a boost to tie it. Because once they, made that big, a lot of people that pass that technically the center caught, and it's a one-score game. And by the time USC realized, hey, we're back in it, it was too late. They were just slipping away here. And it was not only the fact that, they had the lead and lost it, and they just can't close games out now. And I don't know why. And it's fascinating because on paper, I do think USC is better, but Penn State just like annihilated them offensively, besides the turnovers, which they should have done more on capitalizing on. Also, Penn State had over 500 yards and almost doubled the amount of first downs and won on time of possession. So it wasn't a surprise on, Penn State was still in this thing when they were just leaving the door open for them. And then in overtime, they went nowhere but backwards. And you're going to hear that again about another team we follow in overtime when it mattered. And then they missed the field goal, and then you're just asking to lose at that point. So I would say out of the losses, this one was probably the most disappointing because you are USC and you take a tough loss to Minnesota where you had that game one close, and then you were running away with it in the first half against the number 4 team in the country, and you let Penn State back into it, and by the time you realize it's all but over.
Yeah. Let's move on. USF Memphis. I don't know. I don't know what to make of this team. Archie was starting instead of is it Izzy? Is that his name? The other guy, the other backup?
I think so.
Yeah. So they went with Bryce Archie, and he wasn't completely terrible, but Sean Atkins had that fumble that turned into a score for Memphis, and that was a shame. Nico Grammatica had a really long field goal that made it 14-3, but USF really never had that much momentum as far as trying to score or anything. They just kind of were barely in this game, and Memphis just kind of put it in cruise control, didn't put up too much of an effort offensively either, because they had, like at that point, 14-3 was almost like an insurmountable lead. They scored that late touchdown off of a fumble into the end zone that they scored on. But USF only converted 1 third down, 2 for 5 on fourth down. So that's essentially, what is that? That's 3 of 18 on conversions, which is terrible. They only had the ball for 18 minutes, which USF, even when they're scoring good, they don't have the ball very long, but only 24 rushing yards, which is like, I mean, come on, man. If you're going to be in a game, especially with if it's 14-3 into the fourth quarter, you should try to rush the ball a little bit, but they couldn't rush the ball at all. Byram was obviously out. I don't know his status coming into this UAB game coming up to this week, but it doesn't look good. I'm not really happy with how things are going, but I'm also realistic where it's like the first half of the schedule was extremely difficult. Right now, it's rated the 8th toughest schedule in the entire country. So they had a really tough, road. And we knew that. We talked about it at the beginning of the year. If they could, manage to get a game or two out of the first 4 really tough games, then they'd end up being 4-2 and be a completely different story. They played well against Alabama. They played well for half against Miami. They did not show up against Tulane, and they kind of just whatever in this game. So I hope that coming home, obviously dealing with the hurricane was a lot. They had to play this game in Orlando, and I know that's an issue because even support staff, everyone didn't even have power or anything to be able to get logistics or anything done. So I'm sure it was all a huge ordeal, and I am appreciative that they were able to put the game on because it was originally supposed to be on Friday. They moved it to Saturday, and they moved it to Orlando. So I'm glad that they did get it going because it is such a pain to deal with when these games get moved around and canceled and whatnot. So I'm glad they got the game in. It is tough for these kids. Their families are dealing with all kinds of storm-related issues, and they're stressed out. I mean, I was stressed out 2,000 miles away. My head was hurting, stress headaches for days because I was so worried about my family and friends. And it's I can't imagine then trying to play a football game. I don't think I'd be able to concentrate. I mean, and I'm not making excuses. It's more, I don't know. It's just frustrated. I wish this team was better right now, but they're pretty much who they are. And, but the rest of the year is a lot easier. The rest of the schedule outside of the Navy game is winnable. And I think they can at least go 7-5, and definitely 8-4 is a possibility if they can, build up some momentum as they're going, and then maybe they've got some strength to beat this Navy team. I mean, the Navy game will be in Tampa, so they have the next 2 weeks to get right, and hopefully they do, because UAB and Florida Atlantic are not good, so they should be able to get right. Charlotte is not good, Tulsa is not good, Rice is not good, so they have a lot of chances to win games here. So what are your thoughts, Ian?
Yeah, and the one thing about this, so yeah, it was in Orlando, it was at the Citrus Bowl, and that can throw a monkey wrench into a lot of things. But the one thing of it that I noticed was the status of Byron Brown is going to make or break this season, because there is no run game without him under center. It is very predictable when he is not in the lineup, when these read options or handoffs are coming. There's just no flow, no nothing, they're not faking anybody out is the point. Archie did as good as he could in this situation. He did have over 200 yards. I thought he did pretty good, but the running game was an absolute killer. Because you can have 200 yards and that's a pretty good for an offense, but when you only have, I think it was 50 something yards of rushing, that's no
less. It was like 26, 24.
26. That's
24.
Worse.
24.
You will not win a game like that. The other one too was, of course, time of possession. I get USF is up tempo, but man, you only have the ball for less than 20 minutes. That's not good. All in all, just not a good game for really not a good week. They gotta, obviously, I remember saying these first two, Tulane and Memphis, they're going to really see if they're contenders for the AAC. It's clear it's not going to happen this year, but the back half is much more favorable. Like we said, you got UAB, FAU, Navy. That is not a guarantee, but it should be well within hand. Now, like I said, with this team now, is you now have to, with teams that you are now on even ground with, you now have to beat them. So we're going to see that with teams like FAU or Tulsa coming up. If they can beat those teams, it's a sign of progress, and they're going to need to sooner rather than later if they want to go back to another bowl game.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, let's move on to Cal Pitt. This Pitt team is now undefeated at 6-0, which I don't think anyone saw coming into this year. And I'm not really that impressed with them, because they only put up 277 yards of offense, 133 passing. I like this Cal defense a lot. Outside of the Miami game, they've held opponents under 17 points or less the rest of the year, which is really impressive. Some of their opponents haven't been too tough, but still, that is a really good stat, like right there. So Cal, was moving the ball, just couldn't finish drives. Pitt took advantage early. They had a really nice run by their running back. What was his name?
Reed.
Reed. Yeah, Reed had a really nice run. It was like a 70-yard run. And, Cal had their chances at the end of the game. They had a field goal to win it that they missed late. Then they had the ball late again, and then it was a turnover on down. So Cal was right there with them, and I really hate that they lost that Miami game too. And we didn't get to talk about it, Ian, but man, well, I want to hear your thoughts about that Cal Miami finish. What did you think? What did you think of that finish? And then we'll talk about this Cal Pitt game.
I'll make it quick, because I was at the Swamp in that game. I told you, I'm coming back, and it's late at night. Like I'm dead tired, and I look at the score and I go, "Oh, geez, man. Well, Miami's in trouble again." Well, okay, they clearly didn't take my advice. So you need a wake up call. And then I kid you not, I go to bed, sleep, go to the bathroom, and I get a notification. Miami completes epic comeback. Yeah. And I went, what? And I looked, and I could not believe looking at the stat line, I couldn't believe what happened.
Yeah.
Again, it was kind of like, this thing is like, when you have a good team down, keep them down. Don't give them any chance. And Cal did that. And they should have won that game, but somehow, some way, they are still winless in conference play. They lost to Florida State. They lost to Miami that they should have won, and they were outplaying Pitt. But in the end, Pitt finds a way to win. It's like I said about TCU in 2022. Somehow this team's finding a way to win, but this one's not really as impressive.
Yeah. Do you think that was targeting or not on that Miami Cal finish?
I mean, I don't know. It's like, what is the catch anymore? Like, what is targeting?
I don't know, but I mean, like, if
Sure,
that
yes.
one if that one was targeting against Bridges for Florida, where he
Yeah,
hits the guy in
yeah.
the back, and like this was clearly in the head or neck area, and like he used the crown of his helmet. I honestly don't know what they saw. I know conspiracy theorists or the ACC wants their one team to keep winning, and it doesn't look good that 2 weeks in a row that calls that determine the game, both Miami were on the right side of. So it doesn't help there. But I don't know. I really don't know what to make of it because I thought that, if we're trying to protect these players, then you should want to call that targeting because especially against like a quarterback who's running, you want to be more on the safe side. But I don't know. Is what it is. They won. They probably deserved to win after that big of a comeback, anyways. But, just crazy finish. But let's move on. Arizona BYU, another undefeated team. And I don't know if many people realize that this BYU team is really good at all phases of football. And they're good on special teams. They're good on defense. They get non-offensive scores like out the wazoo. They're running the option very well. Retzlaff for BYU is doing a phenomenal job. They look very smooth with their pitches and their spacing, and everything looks really good for them. And look out for this team. I'm telling you, I'm curious to how they will play up against some of the like Ohio State, Oregon, Texas, Georgia teams. Like, can they compete with them? I think they can. And I think because they play all phases of the game, that they are completely capable. In this game, Fafita, just so many picks. And
Yeah.
that was really the difference in the game. And BYU was up 27-10 and really kind of just took them to school. And honestly, this BYU team is just getting better and better every week. They played really well against Kansas State and kind of smoked them. And this is a decent Arizona team, and like I like this BYU team a lot. I think this is a huge surprise to people because there wasn't much hype about them coming into the season, but they're very sound and their schedule is kind of favorable outside of maybe the Arizona State game at the end and maybe the Utah game. But Cam Rising is done for the year for Utah. So that Utah game becomes a little bit easier. So really only Arizona State, they could easily go 11-1. I'm fully thinking that 11-1 is within reason. Your thoughts, Ian?
Yeah, sorry about that.
That's all right.
With this, yeah. I remember I said this was my game that was on upset watch because of how good Fafita is, and that BYU, with the exception of that K-State game, how good they haven't faced as many tough offenses, but they sure proved me wrong. And I'm not really going to doubt BYU now. They did a fantastic job of mixing up their coverages for Fafita and forcing him to throw into those tough passes. And not only that, making him, put the pressure on him where he had maybe 2-3 seconds to make a decision, and he did have to fumble too. It was all BYU the whole game. It was their best defensive performance besides the K-State game this year. And this is kind of the thing, is that when their defense is able to limit the team, I think within like 20 points, it's BYU's game. You're playing right into their hands. So that's the thing BYU is going to do, is just make you find a way to beat through that defense and have their offense just kind of, coast off that.
Well, it's kind of crazy because I'm looking at the third down conversions for Arizona, and they were over 50%, but they couldn't, obviously the turnovers were the difference in the game. But yeah. Okay, let's move on to Florida, Tennessee. I was able to watch most of this game on my computer as I was like driving around LA County because I was going to the USC game, and then I went to a function later for my union. So I was like all over driving, and then I finally got to a Starbucks to be able to watch the game. And Florida looked good on offense. They were moving the ball like clearly, running the ball very well. And we now know that Graham, tore his ACL, so he's done for the year. And, I'm sorry to hear that for him, and that really sucks. And, but, like Florida was moving the ball. They had 3 red zone opportunities and came away with 0 points, which is just so unacceptable. It's not like it's unacceptable in like non-rivalry games, but it's like you can't win games if you're going to do that. And it's like that 4th and 1, the sweep. I have never been so more pissed off with a play call. I don't get it, man. You have DJ Lagway, just run up the gut with him. Like, he's going to get the first down. All he has to do is fall over and he gets the yard. Honestly, I don't get it. I don't see what Napier saw there. And obviously he's deficient with play calling because it's been like that the entire 2.5 years. He's, the talent is there. Ian, like, I think more so than we've ever had before that this is now a talented team. I think, and everyone is realizing that. Like, there are playmakers up and down this roster. DK, dude, Chamari DK with those 2 huge punt returns and that late TD where DJ, oh my God, DJ had that throw to tie it up. It was probably one of the best throws I've ever seen. And it was just like a thing of beauty. And I'm like, man, that's why that kid, like that is it. That it factor right there. It showed right there. Lagway has it, and he knows how to make plays. And DK had such a good game. Montrell had a really good game before he got hurt, and hopefully it's not a huge injury. Hopefully he can come back and just, I don't know. Defense played amazing. They were lights out for like 90% of the game outside of, when Lagway threw that interception, it really kind of changed momentum of the whole game. And, Tennessee was able to tie it. They scored a touchdown, the interception by Lagway, and then they had a short field to get a field goal. So it was 10-10, but it was like, the defense stood up, man. They played a great game. Robinson, the linebacker for Florida, I hadn't even heard of him like all year. I think I've heard him a little bit. And then he had a monster game. And Jaden Robinson, 1.5 sacks, 4 tackles, just a great game. Tyreek Sapp had a sack. Sharif Denson with that huge interception. This game was totally winnable. And what I don't understand is, like, if you are on the road, you score a touchdown to potentially tie it with an extra point, go for 2. And why they did that crazy whatever formation that they did, whatever. But they should have just had a play. You have to have a play. Like, I need a 3-yard play. This is it. A slant inside, whatever, something. Just something quick to score. And you should have just had it. You had a timeout as well. If you needed to call a timeout, get that play in. Kicking the extra point and going to overtime, you were going to lose. And I think everyone thought that, and they still ended up going for 1 and going to overtime. Missed field goal by Trey Smack, and it was barely missed. I honestly watched it again, and I'm like, it looks kind of close, but it was a miss. But and then they get the touchdown to win it, and it's 23-17. But I thought he was going to get fired on Sunday or maybe today, but didn't see it. So it doesn't seem like it's going to happen. I mean, I think they can beat Kentucky with Lagway. But after that, the schedule starts getting really tough. Gets in that murderer's row of Texas, Georgia, LSU, and Ole Miss. So we'll see what happens. I feel bad for Mertz, and I feel terrible for him. It's not the way that we wanted this to happen, but I want to see Lagway, and I am excited to see what he does. It's going to be kind of tough because he doesn't have a backup, really. The guy that's behind him is not really that strong. So hopefully that guy gets some reps this week to get him up to speed because, Mertz is done for the year. So we'll see. But Ian, I want to hear your thoughts on this.
So I texted you and I texted everybody. It's borderline torture. I knew because again, tell me, you will literally go on one of our shows maybe a year or 2 years ago, and you're going to hear me say the same thing. A rivalry game too, where that team was begging to be beaten, or a statement win that was in the palm of your hands, and you let it slip through. And I saw a post, and I couldn't agree more. Out of all the losses, this was the one where coaching, more than any other, lost the game. Yeah. It was not players. It was not talent. Everybody played out of their mind. When Mertz went down, yes, Lagway threw that pick and they tied it, but he also threw that dart for the touchdown, and he looked calm. He did not waver. He could have easily been rattled in that crowd. Tennessee, they're limping coming in. They are looking very beatable now, and they were, again, begging for it. So this was the stat of that. 4 red zone trips, not even just the 3, 4 red zone trips, and you only get 3 points out of it. And on top of that, you run a reverse jet sweep that gets blown up in the backfield on 4th and 1 when you have Lagway, who's like 200 pounds, so good luck stopping him. But with Graham Mertz on the 1-yard line, who is about 80 pounds lighter, you sneak it in and it fumbles. That's bad luck, but man, and I knew that was the thing. When Lagway threw that in the end zone, I was like, they need to go for 2, because if they go for overtime, they're going to lose. Napier has shown no way that they can win in overtime. And again, proven right. That's where I'm just like, I'd rather lose you trying to win than just throwing it up in the air. And sure enough, they kicked the extra point, whatever. And then I knew, even in overtime, you run it and then you get a holding call. And this team has been atrocious on responding to penalties on offense. And that's on coaching. You get a holding call and you're down, 2nd and 15, and you call a bubble screen. You have to get yards here to make it easier for Smack to kick. And you are going backwards. That drive went for -6 yards. So it was a 45-yard kick and they missed it. And I went, well, that's game. Because all Tennessee has to do is kick a field goal and it's over. And it wasted literally the best defensive performance I have seen all year out of Florida. They did an excellent job in coverage and getting to Amal Lavia. I'm too stressed to even get his name right now.
Just say Nico.
Yeah, Nico. It's.
I think it's Imaliva or Imaliva.
Yeah,
something like that.
Regardless, I mean, it's just a broken record. It's like, what else can you say? It's no matter what chance, what opportunity you give this staff, they will find a way to lose. And that's what I've said. I've never seen a team in my time following the Gators, USF, watching all these other teams. I have never seen a team find ways to lose more than this team. It is beyond painful. And honestly, Napier is lucky that UF is like a whirlpool right now with their administration, because after the Texas A&M game, the pink slip should have been given to him, but somehow he's still going to be on the sideline coaching. And that thing they said about, I know I told you, if he's coaching on the sideline of that Texas game I'm going to, I am branding the sign that says Fire Napier. And I can't believe that that's as likely as it is. But
Yeah.
I don't know, man. Again, I'll just say, like I said, thank God for College Football 25 coming out. I at least have that.
Yeah. But you know what? Honestly, I know it's been rough, but at least like the rest of college football has been fun to watch. So like
Thank God for that.
yeah, and I mean doing this show, has made me more open to like other teams and like look at stuff. So I'm like more like, oh, well, this is interesting. And like and that's why I'm like not as I think when we first started this, like when I was starting it in 2016, I was kind of like still one of those, so downtrodden about when Florida would lose. But I don't know. Now I've gone to the point where it's like I'm so a fan of like the sport, so I'm like enjoying how things are going, regardless of how good Florida and USF are doing. And it's like, it is what it is, and it's cyclical. There are teams that are down now that are 5 years from now going to be up, and it's just what it is. It's not, and with the resources that Florida has and the talent-rich state that it is, it's never going to be down forever. Like there are going to be years where Florida is going to be one of the better teams in the country. It's just not right now. And this team is loaded with talent. Offensively, like the running back room has like 3 injuries and they still have studs on that team in the room. And then wide receiver, there are like 6 good wide receivers on the team. It's loaded. And the tight ends, Hansen had a hell of a game, and Arliss Boardingham is a great receiving tight end as well. I mean, this team has a ton of talent. Offensive line is another issue. Still trying to figure that out. But yeah, I love this team offensively. I do not love this team play calling wise, which is clearly on Billy Napier, and we've beaten this to a dead horse, and there's not really much else to talk about. Hopefully it figures itself out in the next couple of weeks. We'll see. I would hope that they can get a better coach in here because Lagway, Boardingham's back next year. Trey is back next year. Jaden Baugh, Jacoby Jackson. I think Hayden Hansen's back next year. Aiden Mizell. There's a lot of talent here that a coach with a really good offensive mind could come in and really dominate with this team. And the defense is looking better. So like, and there's talent there too. So let's move on because we could beat this to a dead horse all night, but I don't really feel like it. Okay. Game of the week, Ohio State,
lived up to it.
Oregon. Dude, did you see? I called it almost exactly. I think I called 35-31 Oregon, and someone did call me out.
Close.
Yeah, dude, and it was very close, and it was like such a great game, even back and forth, just like, Ohio State would score and then Oregon would score, and it just, it's just crazy game. Both really good quarterbacks. Will Howard was great, except for that last play at the end of the game, but Dylan Gabriel looked great. I wish I could have watched this live. I wanted to watch the Florida game, and I didn't really have an opportunity to watch both games at the same time. But just a great game. I watched the whole extended recap, and Oregon looks really good and sets himself up very well for the rest of the year. Even if they don't win the Big Ten championship, they likely have stamped their playoff spot right here. Like that seems almost assured of at this point because this was the hardest game on their schedule and they won. And the rest of the year is not crazy tough. Purdue, Maryland are easy ones. Illinois and Michigan are a little bit tougher. Wisconsin probably pretty easy, and Washington looks pretty bad after getting smoked by Iowa. So, Oregon could easily lose one game and still get to the Big Ten championship game, and they don't even have to win that, and they're in. So, like I said, I think this almost assuredly stamped Oregon's playoff ticket. So, congrats to them. Dylan Gabriel's looking good for potential Heisman, at least to New York as an invite. So, hats off to them. And, Ohio State still has a lot to play for. This is, a tough loss, but not the end of the world. They have Penn State, Nebraska, Indiana, and Michigan. So 4 really tough games at the end of the year, sandwiched in between Purdue and Northwestern games that they should easily win. So their road is not over yet. They still have lots to prove. And, we'll see. They have their, that Penn State game is in a Happy Valley. So that's a tough one to play at. I like Ohio State a lot. They're very talented. I think right now their talent will take them very far, but I think Oregon might be a better cohesive team. And I think that showed in this game. And I think Oregon will end up finishing probably better in the playoff than Ohio State. But Ohio State definitely has the talent. Jeremiah Smith is extremely good. Quinson Judkins is extremely talented as well. Their defense is very solid. Ian, your thoughts?
Yeah, again, this is what I was saying with Oregon, how at the beginning of the year, we know how good they are. So it was very frustrating to see them struggle at the beginning. But this was it. This was their big, statement that they are a serious threat this year. And with that schedule, like you said, it's going to be, they should, if they keep their, eye on the ball, can coast into the Big Ten championship. But this was their toughest test, not only for Oregon, but for Ohio State. And with Ohio State on that one, it's the thing where we're getting to the point where we got a question with Ryan Day in the big game, where if it's a big top 10 game, not including Penn State, that's the one he's kind of won. But with, Michigan's going to be the biggest example, or these playoff games against Clemson or that.
Yeah.
It's really been a struggle for him to get the big one under his belt ever since his first year. And this is another one. They had to go on the road in Eugene. And like I said, as good as Oregon was, paper to paper, Ohio State is the better team. But Oregon played better. They were able to rely on the crowd. They were able to take advantage of the opportunities they had. Ohio State had a lot of chances to score more points and they didn't, and Oregon took full advantage of it. And then when it came down to it, it's one of those things where just Oregon made the big plays where Ohio State couldn't when it mattered. And Oregon deserved to win this game. And this was by far one of the best games of the week, if not the year.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on. Of course, my brother says a ridiculous joke about the Florida. My buddy Joe says, great Tennessee game, y'all. UF left some points on the board, but the defense showed out. Congrats to the Gators. Things looking up after a performance like that against the Vols, especially in Tennessee. And I appreciate that, Joe, but like we said, play calling is the issue. And regardless of how talented the team is, the play calling is going to be an issue until Billy either gets an OC or is fired, and that's just no way around it. Okay, let's move on to Ole Miss, LSU. One of my favorite rivalries, always a really good game, and didn't disappoint at all. LSU had to score late just to force overtime. Ole Miss scores a really long field goal, 57-yarder to go up 26-23. Then LSU gets a touchdown, first play of the overtime, and wins it. Just a crazy game. It was back and forth. But I felt like Ole Miss, watching the highlights, felt like Ole Miss was the better team throughout the entirety of the game. And technically, LSU was never ahead a single second in this game and still won the game, because overtime is not untimed, so it's like they were never ahead the entire game, but still won the game. And it's like, just one of those games where it's like you do everything and you can to win the game, and it's just out of your grasp. And Jackson Dart had a pretty good game. LSU though was in the backfield and sacked him quite a bit. I am surprised how bad they were not able to contain the LSU defensive pressure. But granted to them, handed to them, because they had 1, 2, 2, 4, 5, 6 sacks, which is a lot of sacks. But or maybe 5 sacks, I think. Yeah, 5 sacks. But still, LSU wins this game. And now LSU, with only their loss to USC, is in the driver's seat for the SEC championship game. But their schedule gets a lot more zestier as we go on because they play Arkansas next week, Texas A&M, Alabama, Vanderbilt, Oklahoma. Somehow they get away with not playing Texas, which I don't know how that happened. I don't think they played Oklahoma either. Oh no, sorry, they did. Yeah, last game of the year. So yeah, I guess the way they set it up was everyone either got to play Texas or Oklahoma. You didn't get both. So but yeah, that's a tough schedule. I believe Arkansas can beat them. Texas A&M is good enough to beat them. Alabama is definitely good enough to beat them, and I think Vanderbilt, that could be interesting near the end of the year. But yeah, this LSU team sets themselves up well, but they have a tough schedule. Ole Miss, 2 losses. I don't know. I don't know what to make of them. They're definitely not. They won't have an opportunity to get to the SEC championship game, but they still have an outside shot of getting to the playoffs. It's tough though. They play Oklahoma, Arkansas, Georgia, and Mississippi State are tough games. They have Florida as well, so we'll see. I mean, they could easily beat Oklahoma. They're gonna have a tough game against Arkansas. Probably should lose to Georgia, but it's in Mississippi. They should beat Mississippi State, and they should beat Florida. So at least probably one more loss there. So 9-3 may get you to the playoff, but because their front half of their schedule was so weak, it may prevent them from getting in. What are your thoughts, Ian?
With this one, it's the luster of Ole Miss is kind of worn off because this was a game that they could have won, and again they were in it. They knew they were going to be in a fight with LSU because it's in Death Valley and all that, but when it came down to it, it's just the defense was not able to get the stops where Ole Miss was able to, or LSU was able to. Like we said, when it went into overtime, they were able to burn the secondary, and the secondary of Ole Miss has been very, very thin this past couple of weeks. But LSU was able to force the 2 turnovers. It was an even game, but like I said, LSU was able to get the stops when it was necessary compared to Ole Miss. And Ole Miss still hasn't found a way to kind of like win these really tough road games yet. This was one where they had the chance, and again, I think Ole Miss was the better team, but LSU made the better plays.
Yeah. Okay. Vanderbilt, Kentucky. If you don't know, this Vanderbilt team is pretty good because Pavia, the quarterback for Vanderbilt, is very athletic, very capable runner, and very solid in the pass game. And it's a deadly combination that Vanderbilt has someone capable. The rest of the pieces around them are not amazing. The defense is sound, but the offense is now proficient. And they'll score like they did against Alabama. They can score 35 plus if they need to. They should have beat Tech, and they were very close against Missouri. They probably should have beat both of them. And they lost. Which one did they win? They beat
Tech. They lost to Georgia State and
they lost to Georgia
Missouri.
State. Yeah, and so the Georgia State one, I think that's just an anomaly. The rest of the year has been nothing but plus games for Vanderbilt. So they have 2 losses. They have only 1 loss in the SEC. Their schedule, I'm going to look at it right now because I'm curious because I haven't looked at it. They have Ball State, tough one against Texas, obviously. Auburn, they should be able to beat. South Carolina will be close, but I think South Carolina may lose another game or 2 by then, and that may put them on the downward trend. And really, honestly, the last 2 games, LSU and Tennessee, the LSU game becomes hugely important because, Texas they might lose to, but with a 2-loss SEC team, there is a chance that they could get to the playoff, or not playoff, the SEC championship game. And so anything is possible from that point. So they'd have to obviously beat LSU and Tennessee, but if they come into that game at 7-3 with a lot to play for in Baton Rouge, man, that may be one of the bigger games that we've probably never expected a Vanderbilt LSU game to be like ESPN primetime game. That would be crazy. I'd love to see that. I really would. Honestly, this Texas Vanderbilt game, God, dude, Alabama was number 1 and Texas is number 1 coming to Nashville. Dude, Vanderbilt could beat Texas. You never know. You really don't. They're a very good team. It's crazy. I'm just blown away with how good this Vanderbilt team is. And dude, Clark Lee, hell of a coach. Dude, he's an alumni. He's not going anywhere. He loves that school. I'm extremely happy for them. It's great to see because Vanderbilt has not been good in the 30 years I've been a fan of college football, 30 plus years. And now they actually have an opportunity to be good. And it's great to see. People are happy for them. That win against Alabama was huge. And your thoughts, Ian?
So, like you said, it's been 30 plus years since we've seen Vanderbilt really be good and have sustained success. And it looks like they're turning the corner. They're beating the teams that they are at level with. And that comes to the transfer they've brought in and the talent they're playing. Kentucky did, I think, outgain them. They had 300 something yards and Vandy almost had 300. But again, Vandy's defense has shown up. And when you have an offense like Kentucky, that's right into Vanderbilt's wheelhouse. And they were able to put up enough points where Kentucky couldn't come back. It was 20-7 going into the fourth quarter, late into the fourth quarter. And that's asking a lot for a Kentucky game. Knowing the game plan from Clark Lee has been very good. He knows the strengths and the weaknesses of every team they play and how to gear Vanderbilt play calling wise, both on the offense and defense, on how they're going to play against them. And this was no exception. This was a tough grind out, run heavy, keep the ball away type of game. And that's exactly, knowing Kentucky's not the best on offense, exactly how they were going to have to win this game, and they did. And Vanderbilt has actually won against Kentucky in Lexington the past 2 times now because they beat them in 2022. So so it's really crazy thing to say, going into the decade. If you were to tell me that Vanderbilt not only would beat Kentucky twice in Lexington, but Alabama, it's insane. The only injustice is that they're still not ranked, and there's plenty of teams in that top 25 that do not deserve to be ranked that Vandy should be.
Yeah, and I think Vanderbilt is a better team than Michigan right now.
Oh yeah,
Vanderbilt should easily be higher ranked than Michigan. And this Kentucky team, Vandergriff is whatever. Really, the rest of the talent around him is not very good offensively, so they're just kind of an okay team. I think they had a good result against Georgia, and they obviously beat Ole Miss. But I don't know, this Kentucky team, they lost to South Carolina. They who did they lose to last week? I can't remember who they lost to last week, but they've lost 3 games, so they're just kind of this whatever team. And I know Florida's playing them next week, but I like Florida's chances with DJ. So hopefully this Kentucky streak goes away, because God, I never would have thought that Kentucky would have a long win streak against Florida, but here we are. Okay, moving on. Iowa State, West Virginia. This Iowa State team, workman-like game. Becht actually had a decent game, 265 to the air, but Garrett Green struggled for West Virginia, 2 interceptions, and was really the difference in the game because, Iowa State didn't do a ton to really stand out, but it was a 14 game going into the fourth quarter. And then Iowa State's just one of those teams that kind of just leans on you until the end. And then, they break their will and they just run the ball all over them. Carson Hansen had 96 yards, 3 TDs. and this West Virginia team, who I had high hopes for, now 3-3, and we'll see where they go from there. But this Iowa State team, undefeated, number 9 in the country right now, so they have a lot to play for. Them and BYU looking like going to meet in the Big 12 championship game, and that would be a crazy big game because either Iowa State's going to be undefeated or BYU is going to have like maybe one loss, and because Iowa State's schedule looks very easy. They only have 5. No, it's easy except for the last game. They play Kansas State, so they should easily beat UCF. Well, Texas Tech is 5-1. We'll see.
That's a
how
trap
Texas
game.
Tech does. Yeah, that could be an interesting game, but it's in Ames, so it's a home game for them. So maybe they can pull away from that one. The Kansas game they should take care of. Cincinnati, I'm not really that big on. And Utah lost Cam Rising, so they should finish out the season 11-0 going into that Kansas State game, depending on that Texas Tech game. But the Kansas State game, I love this Kansas State team. We're going to talk about in a second, but that is a huge game at the end of the year. I'm excited to see that one because that'll definitely determine who goes to the Big 12 championship game. So your thoughts, Ian, before we move on.
Yeah, just real quick. It was a typical Iowa State game. You mentioned it. Iowa State lives and breathes on staying with you until the end and wearing you down. And then they broke through at the end. And I knew that going in when it was close in the fourth quarter. I went, this is right in Iowa State's hands. And sure enough, they got the scores to put them away. And honestly, it was, like I said, typical Iowa State victory and a big one. They're still undefeated and, have the season still in front of them.
All right, next one. Last of the teams we cover, UCLA, Minnesota. UCLA was up 10-0 at half. Minnesota comes back in the third quarter, 14-10. And then UCLA goes up late. And then Minnesota scores with like 26 seconds left. And just, Minnesota, hurting the Los Angeles area 2 weeks in a row. They beat USC with a minute left. They beat UCLA with 26 seconds left. So I'm not really impressed with this Minnesota team. I know how much UCLA has struggled. Garbers was starting. I didn't even expect that. I thought Justin Martin was going to start, but Garbers was in, throws 3 picks, was decent in most of the game outside those picks, and they had an opportunity to win the game. The defense is very strong for UCLA, and I still think there's a ton of talent on this team. They're just snake bitten right now. They really are, and they're struggling to do anything on offense, scoring about 17, 14 points a game. That's pretty much all they've been able to do. They haven't scored more than that the entire year, even in their win against Hawaii. I don't know. I don't know what to make of this team. It's, a struggle every week. I don't know if they're just going to go with the youth movement and put in Justin Martin, but they're seemingly stuck here with Garbers now, and this is what it is. Your thoughts, Ian?
Yeah, and it's just like they have still not scored 20 points, and we are in the middle of October. Yeah. It is, you want a reason for why UCLA is only won one game. That's it. Is that the offense is just in a complete tailspin. There's no identity with this team. And they're just being like walked over on. And looking at the remaining schedule, they got Rutgers coming up this week. And then after that, their next chance to win a game is Fresno State, because they still got to, I know they got to go to Lincoln. Then they got to play Iowa. Then they got to play Washington. I think that's in Seattle. And then FC. And then
that's a winnable game. Washington is not that good of a team. They got smoked by Iowa. So they have a shot against Washington. They should beat Fresno State.
Whoever scores 21st in that game is going to win, is the point of that one. But it's just it's a really, really tough season, and it's just a shame to see it. But when you don't have, I remember hearing this, and this was about the Gators in 2013, and this was after they lost to Georgia Southern. They interviewed a guy at the University of Florida, and they said, yes, I expected it. When you can't score, you'll lose to anybody. This is the case in point. You will lose to anybody if you can't score.
Yeah. Okay, moving on. Kansas State, Colorado. Kansas State was in command of this game for the most part. Colorado comes back, gets a lead late, and then Avery Johnson, this kid, he's very athletic, very fast, and has a very good command of the offense. And DJ Giddens for Kansas State had a huge game, 182 yards on the ground. And just, this offense is very complimentary as far as with the passing attack and the rushing attack. So they're able to mix in the two and very balanced. And, the defense is strong. Shedeur Sanders looked good in this game. But, Kansas State held them to negative 29 yards rushing, which is ridiculous. I don't even know how that is even possible. Shedeur had 388 yards passing. Granted, hand it to this Kansas State team. This is a very solid team, and I knew that they could win this game, and they did. And they're a very good team. And it's not taking away from Colorado. They're obviously Shedeur is very good, and Travis Hunter went out in this game, and he's very good. But I don't like the rest of this Colorado team. There's not a ton of talent on the team outside of those two guys, and so I don't know. Just the media hype about them is just always just overblown. But this Kansas State team is for real. They have a tough schedule coming up. They have West Virginia, Kansas, Arizona State, and Iowa State to end it. So really tough games. We'll see how they end up, but I like their chances right now. They're a very good team, and I like them in the playoff, even if they don't make the Big 12 championship game or they don't win it. I think they're a really formidable team right now, and I like this team a lot. It's probably one of my favorite teams that is not one of the teams we cover. Ian, your thoughts before we finish up?
Yeah, when it came down to this, Colorado did their best to hang with them. And I think these teams, Kansas State is better, but Colorado did everything they could to stay with K-State and maybe jump on them when K-State was, maybe sleepwalking in this one. But the difference in this game was that, like we've said, with Colorado, their offense is very one-dimensional. With, Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter, and he was out, it becomes very predictable, and K-State fed on that. And now Sanders still had a very impressive game, not taking that away from him. But K-State was much more balanced, and that was the struggle for this defense. We know Colorado's had struggles on defense, and as improved as they have been, they still, when you have a balanced run attack and a balanced passing attack, that's not going to be, I think it was over 100, almost 200 yards rushing, and then it was over 200 yards passing compared to Colorado, who all they could do was throw it. And when you have a run game that is not working for Colorado, you become very predictable. And for K-State, keeping that defense off balance, while they were able to get the jump on K-State, they were able to pull it out in the end. And we've seen, Kansas State has shown an incredible resilience of, fighting through these, really close games and games they're down in where they were expected to win. And they find a way to pull it out. And not, again, something you want to keep doing, but it is impressive. And they've been in these situations before, and that is only going to help them later down the road.
Yeah. And, this team, I don't think a lot of people have been paying attention to this K-State team, but they need to, because this is definitely a team that could surprise some of these bigger name teams, like we said, like Ohio State, Oregon, Georgia, Alabama. So I'm curious to see where this goes. And that's the beauty of the 12-team playoff, is the fact that these teams that are outside the fringe, that are not necessarily like the top teams in the country, they get a shot now inside a 12-team playoff to really make an opportunity and make a run. So we'll see. That is the show, everyone. I hope you enjoyed it. We have a show on Wednesday. I know this was on Monday and not the normal time. I just had to work yesterday, so I didn't have an opportunity to do the show last night. But going forward, it's always Sunday and Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. You can reach us at haterradio.com for all of our articles. For our socials, for X, Twitter, Threads, Instagram, and TikTok, it is at hater_radio. For Facebook, it is Hater Radio CFB. I'm losing lights. And then for YouTube, it is at Hater Radio. Ian, what are your socials before we go?
Yes, at Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter, it's at G_Gator_G.
All right, that is the show. We'll talk to you Wednesday, and have a good one. Take care, y'all.